All right, let's bring in my next guest, New York Post editor at large, Kelly Jane Torrance. Kelly, thanks so much for coming on the program tonight. So glad to have you with me. And boy, I want to talk, first of all, about what's happening in the soon-to-be People's Democratic Republic of New York City, where Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani has had some controversy, more controversy, about an anti-ICE message he shared to social media this week. Have a look at this.
ICE cannot enter into private spaces like your home, school, or a private area of your workplace without a judicial warrant signed by a judge. ICE does not have a judicial warrant signed by a judge. You have the right to say, "I do not consent to entry," and the right to keep your door closed. ICE is legally allowed to lie to you, but you have the right to remain silent. If you're being detained, you may always ask, "Am I free to go?" repeatedly until they answer you. You are legally allowed to film ICE as long as you do not interfere with an arrest. It is important to remain calm during any interaction with ICE or law enforcement. Do not impede their investigation, resist arrest, or run.
Kelly, watching this, I feel almost like I'm watching one of those nutty videos from some sovereign citizen on the internet telling you that you don't need to pay your taxes or something like that here. This looks almost like sedition to me. It certainly looks like you're trying to interfere with federal law enforcement from a local level, which would be unconstitutional. And even Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has called him out. What is happening here in New York with your soon-to-be mayor?
Well, great question, James. And you're right. The video does have that feel, doesn't it? But yeah, Zohran Mamdani, the next mayor of New York City, just a few short weeks now, he'll take office, is telling New Yorkers to not follow federal law. He is telling them to not respect federal law enforcement. And it's pretty shocking. What's also shocking, James, is that Governor Kathy Hochul said she agreed with him. She actually was asked about this, and she's on Zohran's side, and said kudos to him for doing this. It's pretty shocking, and I have to tell you, New York, obviously, we've got a crime problem. The first time I started to feel safe myself as a New Yorker was when Donald Trump came into office and arrested actually a bunch of violent illegal immigrants who were right here in New York City and took a bunch of them off the street. And that was the first time in a while I actually felt safer. So it's quite interesting that the new mayor, again, ICE is primarily targeting people who are here illegally and have violent criminal records. So you can just imagine the type of people that he is trying to help here. We're talking about rapists, people who assault people, even sometimes murderers. And those are the people Mamdani is siding with against the law-abiding people of New York.
Well, and they're exactly the people that you don't want. And of course, it's the immigrant communities and the minority communities, as we saw when Rudy Giuliani was mayor, who are helped most by cleaning up crime. But let's move on to, speaking of the president here, who is, of course, Zohran Mamdani's either BFF or public enemy number one, depending on the day. He is going on his own warpath here, this time not just talking about Venezuela, which we talked about earlier in the program, but he's also pushing now against the Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, as part of his campaign against drug trafficking. Kelly Jane Torrance, tell us more about the broader war against imported drugs from South America that Trump is taking on. It's not just about Venezuela. He's now opening up potentially a whole front with South America. How is this being received in New York and more broadly across the U.S.?
Well, I think most Americans are really worried about the drugs that are on our streets. Until recently, overdose deaths from drugs were up every year. Only recently it started to stabilize and even go down a tiny bit. And so most Americans are very worried about this, and they don't want drugs coming in from other countries. Now, of course, you do have liberals who, anything President Trump does, they hate. So they're, finding reasons not to like this. And of course, they don't like that he's been attacking narco terrorists as they try to come into the United States with their drugs. And so Colombia, a reporter asked him about the Colombian president, Petro, and Trump has, he often likes to think out loud, and he's saying, "Well, I haven't got any plans yet." But as he started talking, he kind of felt like he was talking himself into it. Yeah, that guy's going to be next. Let's do him next. And so I think it's an interesting threat, and certainly Colombia's, for decades and decades has been one of the biggest importers of drugs into America, and even drugs that are coming from other countries like Mexico that they originate a lot of times in
Of
Colombia.
course.
So it's huge problem, and certainly, one that no president really recently has tried to do anything about. I mean, President Biden certainly had no policy to try to stem the flow of illegal drugs, and certainly Barack Obama didn't. So, Trump really is one of the first presidents recently, and he's tackling it in a very different way. This is not, the war on drugs that I think is a little bit hopeless because attacking people here in America
Mm.
session and that sort of thing is not really going to work. But he's really going after the source of the problem, which is really, I think, a great way to tackle it. And certainly acting like who knows who could be next. Again, Trump playing the kind of wild man, that unpredictability that does worry some of these guys because they don't know what he's going to do. Who knows? They could be next.